In the beginning, the internet was without form and void. Protocols were thrown together recklessly, and little heed was paid to security. If one host wanted to send messages to another, they were sent largely unprotected, even if they contained sensitive material like passwords. This was Generation 1, and as the ubiquity and sophistication of surveillance technology grew, the internet responded in kind. Services began to encrypt data in motion, and this gradually became commonplace. Virtually every service that handles sensitive data today, from banking websites to Gmail, employs encryption by default. This was Generation 2, and it represented a huge step forward for digital privacy. However, these services were far from perfect. Messages were protected in transit, but at rest on the servers themselves, their contents were decrypted and therefore made vulnerable to unscrupulous actors, especially those that could legally compel service providers to hand over their users' data. The Generation 2 email provider LavaBit earned some notoriety in 2013 for their heroic but ultimately unsuccessful efforts to resist government demands for this private data. Generation 3 technologies emerged to combat this very problem by offering end-to-end encryption. Now users could exchange encrypted messages directly without having to pass through a potentially vulnerable intermediary. This again constituted a significant step forward for digital security and, more than any other effort, put the tools necessary for privacy into the hands of the people. However, one critical shortcoming remained. The security of these crypto systems still depended on the integrity of the underlying device. It turns out that even the best encryption in the world does you little good if the device doing the encryption can be hacked. Smartphones, for instance, don't just send and receive encrypted messages. They engage in all sorts of communication. And if any of the programs engaged in any of those communications is vulnerable, the entire phone is vulnerable, including the contents of encrypted messages. State agencies employ tens of thousands of security analysts and reverse engineers to find device vulnerabilities and cultivate exploits so that they can circumvent the protections offered by encryption software. Encryption is necessary for secure communications, but not sufficient. This is where Generation 4 technology comes into play, which not only protects the data in transit, but also prevents the endpoints on either end of the conversation from being hacked. This is achieved by providing network isolation. Communicating endpoints exist inside of an air gap, which is bridged only to other air-gapped networks, and the entire link between them is encrypted end-to-end. These Generation 4 devices only exchange encrypted messages, which means potentially vulnerable services can't be reached and exploitation becomes exponentially more difficult. Even if the endpoint itself isn't secure, it can't reach out to the internet at large, nor can attackers reach out to it. Protected devices and networks have an internet all to themselves. The protections offered by each generation are cumulative. They're getting better every step of the way. Prolaag's virtual private link hardware is the first Generation 4 device commercially available. With it, you can enjoy the security and peace of mind that comes from unparalleled digital privacy. To learn more about Generation 4 devices, how they work, and what you can do with them, please visit our website or see our other videos explaining the technology in more detail. Thanks for watching.